part of the question too. And again, these are things that we hear from clients or are popular, what I would consider myths that, the dollar's fading. We're going to lose our our standing as a global reserve currency. So I think you kind of explained that, but is there anything else? I mean, is it relative to the rest of the world? Is that basic? Again, people worry about what's going on here, but then they don't think about it in relativity terms to the rest of the world.
Yeah, you have to think about where we're going. So, countries tend to have when they get the reserve currency, you tend to have it for quite a while until another major economy emerges to become the world's biggest economy, the world's biggest military power, and so you think about it. The British pound sterling had that reserve currency status until Europe became largely destroyed from two world wars. The U.S. emerges as the strongest economy, and for a very long while, there was no competition to that status. Now, people look as competition to that status as a bad thing. We should want to grow the pie. We don't want the U.S. to be 50% of world economic activity. The fact that we're 20 to 25% of world economic activity is better, right? When other countries emerge, there's a greater pie, there's more customers to sell to, etc. So it's not a bad thing, but you have to ask yourself, well, reserve currency, where else are you going to park your money? So Europe makes sense, big economy, military, but they don't have a fiscal union. They don't have FDIC insurance. So not a great option. China, very large economy, but China doesn't have a free flow of capital, so it doesn't allow them to emerge. That, and China may, they talk about combining with Russia or Brazil, but Russia has its challenges. Brazil's policies historically have been challenged, so there's not really another alternative at this point. And the final point I would make is that people think of it as if the U.S. dollar loses its reserve currency, that's it. That's the end of the U.S. First of all, I don't think it's going to happen in our lifetimes, but think about the British pound sterling. Right, it was 1945 that they lost the reserve currency status. Is that a weak currency? I think the UK is like the 7th largest economy in the world, or maybe that's California, but something like that, right? They're in the G7, a very large economy with a reasonably strong currency. So again, people think it's like this unbelievable danger. That's not how this works.
I think it's worth mentioning too that again, this is elementary for our level, but the global reserve currency is not something that's voted on. This isn't like the UN gets together and people go, which one should we use this year? Well, we'll use the dollar. I mean, it's a result of what's happening in the world. People vote with their money. Where the money goes determines where the global reserve currency is. So again, it's not something that we're going to lose by vote. If people feel comfortable with dollars, no matter what's going on in the U.S. economy or the government, whatever else, then dollars will remain the global reserve currency until It's not.
Well said.
Federal government. Let's talk. So we kind of talked a little bit about federal government, but let's start talking about election, because this is and I think this seems to increase every time we have an election. I don't know if it's access to news media or social media, or everybody's got 24/7 access now. But election and with the polarization of both sides is pretty much on everybody's mind. So are you concerned about the markets as it relates to the coming election?
No, I'm not. And I'm going to give you a stat. So President Biden was elected president 957 days ago. And the market, the S&P 500 is up 65% over those 957 days. So that's from November 3rd, 2020. Any guesses what the market was up from the 957 days after Trump was elected in November 2016? 65%. I mean, you can't make it up. It's stunning how they're sitting right on top of each other. So people worry every 4 years. I mean, I was told Obama was going to be bad for the markets. I was told Trump was going to be bad for the markets. I was told Biden was going to be bad for the markets. Now I'm being told Kamala Harris is going to be bad for the markets, or Trump 2.0 is going to be bad for the markets. The market cares about the direction of the economy and what the Fed is going to do. The market is not overly concerned with the executive branch of government.
Yeah, we agree. But I mean, we get hammered every 4 years, right? Because every political candidate, since there's ever been a political candidate, runs on the same campaign that everything is awful, but vote for me and I'll fix it.
Yeah.
And so when everyone hears that over and over and over again, the sentiment is awful. Everyone thinks that if their candidate doesn't win, then everything's going to come crashing down.
Yeah.
But obviously,
And
stats
if
prove
you
themselves.
if you think about the last 8 years, and that's why I like to do that stat on Trump's performance over the first 957 days and Biden's. In 2016, Hillary Clinton said if Trump wins, he'll treat the economy like one of his casinos. We'll all go bankrupt. And then Trump
Yeah.
said in 2020, if Biden wins, your 401k will go to zero. The market will go to zero. And they've both had the exact same performance over the first 900.
And I'm gonna tell you, Brian, you're not gonna win any friends on either side, Brian. You're way too much in the middle. I mean, it's got to be like,
my
it's got to
goals-
be, one is terrible, one's great. That's the only way
my
it
goal
can
is to
work,
upset
right?
everyone. Well, look, I mean, we all have
It sounds like what
our
the market really doesn't like. The market really doesn't like the end of presidencies. It just sort of ends up dipping at the end, and then sets up the next person for a pretty good run.
Might have something to do with uncertainty going forward.
No kidding.
How about if we get a little bit more, outside of just broad market? Are there specific sectors or industries that might benefit from one candidate, or I guess one side or another?
I hesitate to make those obvious sector or industry calls. They tend to not be right. I was trained in this, focusing on where you are in the cycle, direction of the economy, what the Fed's going to do. And it's pretty rare that who's the president changes the answer to those questions. For what it's worth, it's also pretty rare that conflicts around the world change the answers to those questions. So it's hard. I don't love to do it. And I'll give you an example. If we had spoken, if this podcast was being recorded November 2016 when Trump won, and we went around the five of us and said, what's going to do better, traditional energy or clean energy? I think most of us would have said traditional energy. Probably 5 for 5 would have said traditional energy. Well, traditional energy was down 50% under Trump, and clean energy was up 150% under Trump. Now, on the flip side of that, if we had spoken the week that Joe Biden won in November 2020, I think 5 out of 5 of us would have said it was better for clean energy. And yet clean energy is down under Biden. Traditional energy is up over 200% under Trump. And in actuality, the U.S. now drills more barrels of oil per day than any country in the history of the world ever. So, sometimes these obvious sector or industry calls, actually often, don't play out the way many people suspect they will.
So what you're saying is you can't really predict the market. We've never talked about this before.
Well, it's not. I mean, it's not that you can't try to. You can't try to use the tools that you have to think about the market. So if I know with absolute certainty, if my indicators tell me no recession, inflation's coming down, the Fed's going to ease, no recession, then I have a decent sense of what market leadership's going to look like. I would expect broader markets, cyclical, small cap value to do well. But that doesn't matter to me if it's Donald Trump or Kamala Harris.